Welcome to our May 20th edition of the Southern Fried DNN Meetup. We're at a new time today, 3 p.m. Eastern, and whatever it is in your favorite time zone where you are. But thank you for joining us. We're going to try out something a bit new here. Throughout 2020, I'm going to try to alternate the meeting times between daytime here Eastern to the evening, which would be our normal time of 6:30 p.m. Eastern on the alternating months. So this is our first one for the 3 p.m. time slot. So I hope that that frees up and makes a bit more available for some of the more global community to be able to join and participate in these meetups. We're also kind of stepping up the game a bit on getting speakers in. So if you'll notice on the meetup page out here, we actually have I'll go back to the main events tab here. We actually have meetups scheduled throughout the remainder of 2020. Not all topics have been determined at this point, but we do have the speakers lined up and committed to speak. And you'll notice that on each meetup, there's actually 2 speakers now. So we're trying this as well, a little bit shorter slots for speakers, around 30 to 40 minutes tops, for each speaker. So we'll start out with some community buzz on each of them like we normally do, and then shift right into the speakers. We're trying to bring a little bit more content to everyone and bring a little more variety as just a nature of having more speakers and all that. So it's really nice. The first 4 that we're doing here being kicked off, you'll notice that the leadership team is actually involved as one of the speakers for each of these. So it's going to be nice to give them a little bit more spot to share a little bit more about what's going on in their respective areas of leadership within the DNN community. So be sure to take a look at the schedule out here. It should reflect your time zone. Go ahead and get registered for the ones that you want to participate in. If you're not able to join us live, you're able to also check out southernfrieddnn.com as well as our YouTube channel and be able to catch the replays on there, as well as any notes of sites that were pulled up during the meeting and so forth. Ryan or I will be taking notes of all of this being mentioned in these meetups. So we'll try to do a good job of writing those up on the southernfrieddnn.com website.
Yep, and we're also dual posting those to the DNN community website as well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you started doing that on the DNN. That's a good segue. So over on the resources blogs on dnncommunity.org, I think Ryan has been posting the meetup notes out from each of them, as well as, I think, do you have the embedding of the video there as well, or is that just linked?
No, that's correct. The video is also there, ready to play.
Excellent. So be sure to check all that out, because we know everybody's not always available to join us live, but you have that nice resource there for you. I wanted to kick things off by mentioning our sponsor, manage.com, for hosting the southernfrieddnn.com website. Thanks for all that you do for the community. It looks like their bar is a little bit messed up. Sorry, just noticed that. So, hey, get on that. Somebody needs to fix that. But thank you for sponsoring us and continuing to support the DNN community the way that you do. If you need services for hosting and so forth, be sure to check out manage.com. I'm sure they can help you out. I'm going to keep things a little bit high level here, but if there's anything specific that anybody would like to call out for announcements within the community, feel free to do so. Just chime up. You can either raise your hand in the Zoom reactions there, or just interrupt me and talk over me. That's fine as well. So be sure to check out dnncommunity.org if you do not know about this resource. There's a lot of activity going on out here. You'll see the latest, like in the blogs that we have out here, as well as you can see things like DNN releases and some of the GitHub activity if you're interested in that, as well as DNN docs and quite a bit of other stuff. You've got the Forge out here to be able to find extensions that you may be interested in out there, as well as some information on DNN MVPs, different agencies within the community, the leadership team, different events that might be going on, even metrics on website and who's visiting, where they're visiting from, and all that kind of good stuff. So be sure to check out that resource. If you do not know already, DNN Platform is on GitHub. So if you were to go out to github.com, go to DNN software/DNN.platform, you will there find the actual source code for DNN Platform. We are looking for people to get involved out here. Now you may be saying, well, that's a little bit above my comfort zone for coding and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's okay. We need your help in identifying issues that you might be experiencing in the platform. And you can actually sign up for a free GitHub account and actually go to the issues tab and post an issue out here. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't require your coding knowledge to do it. You simply click the new issue button and decide whether or not it's a bug or an enhancement request, or you want to report a security vulnerability. It'll give you instructions on how to do that. So if you also have some convenient links here to the DNN community forums on dnncommunity.org, as well as DNN documentation, which is on dnndocs.com. So get involved out here and participate in the conversation on the issues, either by creating them or providing more insight for them, as well as testing for new releases that are coming out. You'll notice that release candidates are released prior to the actual official release of it. So they'll be sure to get involved. If you're looking to download DNN, go to the releases tab and you'll see all of the different versions of DNN Platform. We always recommend that you install the latest and greatest release because it will have the most up-to-date security patches, as well as nice enhancements and features that you may be looking for there. And you'll see detailed release notes for each of them, or links to information like recently in 9.8.0, the ability to remove Telric, which is a great security enhancement that's been made. You can have the optional removal of that, and that now lives on the DNN Docs website. So you can find out information about these, and these are all linked to the individual issues and pull requests that were made for each of these. So check that out. And if you're wanting to download, you simply go to the bottom of the release and you'll see the various package, everything from install to upgrade, as well as getting symbols and deploy packages. So that was a mouthful. I also wanted to mention, just for your awareness, that the DNN Open Help Slack group is a very active way to, or a community, I guess you could say, where a lot of DNN community members interact, and it's a little bit more real time. You may find that a helpful resource. You can just go to openhelp.slack.com and sign up with a free Slack account there and get involved in the conversation. I think the last time I looked, it was well over 200 and I don't know, 40 or 50 or so members that are out there, and it's growing every day. So be sure to join in on the conversation. If you're on Facebook, check out DNN Connect group on Facebook. This is a public group that you may find it a little bit more helpful to interact with people there where you are. So feel free to check that out as well. Okay. So I am sure that I missed some details. So Ryan, do you have a few that you would like to point out specifically? You're muted.
How about that? I had two things that I wanted to point out for Community Buzz, and likewise, I'll keep them very quick. But one of them is a release from Will Stroll. He's also on the meeting with us, but Will Stroll in the GitHub account for Upendo released the new scheduled DNN application restart scheduled job module. And it's something that I have needed a bunch of times when I don't directly have access to IIS or don't directly have full control over a client server, but I need to do something like make sure that the application can restart on a scheduled time period, especially for those sites that get hammered or need a good restart in the mornings before the clients come in. Then this is a tool that does that perfectly. And so I wanted to make sure we talked about that or mentioned it, put a link out there for people to check it out. I think it's incredibly useful. Thank you, Will, for that.
Yeah, so if you go out to github.com/Upendo Ventures, And then you could actually find the DNN.restart app there. I'm assuming that's the one that you're talking about.
That's right. I just
And
passed you the link, but that's the one.
It's well documented. So kudos to Will and his team for documenting this and how it works. Also as well to contribute to it. So that's another open source opportunity for you to get involved in. And Will, I don't know if you want to add any notes on that to just highlight anything here.
Thank you for mentioning it.
All right. Well, then the second thing that I wanted to mention is a bit of a teaser. We are, David and I and Will and several others who are all on today are all involved with the DNN Summit and the user conference that is put on roughly every February. And we are far enough along in planning that we were able to give a little teaser for DNN Summit 2022. And we can announce that DNN Summit 2022 will be held as a hybrid conference in Las Vegas, February 19th, February 9th and 10th, 2022. And what that means is it's going to be a hybrid conference, both fully online and through Hopin, like we did here in 2021, but also on location at the MGM Grand for social in-person events and get together. And what that means is for everyone who wants to attend, like they did this past year and found it freeing to be able to attend online and do a completely virtual conference, then you'll be able to attend just as you did this past year. For those of us who really enjoy that in-person networking and feel that we'll be able to have some time to get out to California for that and be able to stay in the luxurious MGM Grand, which is on the Strip, then it'll also be there. So we'll be able to have DNN After Dark, networking, and get-together type activities. And when it comes time for presentations and sessions, we will all go back up to our rooms, get online with our computers, and do the conference either speaking or attending just as we did this year. So it's going to be a unique idea and one that we feel is going to cater to whatever the situation is for people, for work, whether they can travel or can't travel, and for quarantine on whether travel is in good shape or not, and depending on people's individual circumstances. So there'll be more information coming out about that soon, but never too early to tease that we're excited about putting that together February next year.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So be sure to visit dnnsummit.org on occasion, and I'm sure more details will be shared there when the time comes for that to happen. So thanks, Ryan. Does anybody, I'll open the floor just for a second to see if anybody else has anything they'd like to highlight that's going on in the community or you think of is of special interest to the community.
Could you just repeat the date?
I think you said it was February the 9th and 10th
That's
of
correct.
2022.
Thanks.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for joining.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
At least you're doing one that's convenient for Peter and me in widely different time zones.
Exactly.
That's part of the idea.
Excellent. Any other potential announcements there or highlights for the community? Okay. We actually pulled it off. I was hoping to get through highlights in 15 minutes, so we did it. Congratulations. Thanks for your help on that. And I guess without further ado, I want to turn this first session over to Peter Donker. Peter is the lead of the development aspects of the DNN community and really is an OG when it comes to DNN. He's been around since the primo day, the primero numero, yeah, whatever that is, the first day, right? And was involved in the original core team, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I believe he's also authored a bit when it comes into the old DNN or .NET Nuke books. So you're definitely hearing from one that's trusted in the community, and look forward to seeing what he brings today as it relates to DNN development and all the great things that are going on there. So Peter, I'll turn it over to you. Cool. I'll stop sharing.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'll go and get this sharing going. Let's have a look. let's share this screen here. I hope you all can see that. Please
We
let me
see it
know
great.
if you see it just great.
Yes,
Okay,
see it
well,
good.
there you are. So there's me face. And I'll be talking about DNN Extension Development. As David mentioned, I am the dev lead for the DNN project currently, which runs kind of intertwined with the technology aspect a lot with what Mitch is doing. But I try to focus on the experience as it is for an extension developer, right? So we're not talking about development of the platform itself. We're talking about development of extensions on top of DNN. That is my primary focus. And I want to, when the invite came, if I have half an hour, it's not going to be showing code and how to do stuff, etc. There's tons of resources out there. What I wanted to do actually today was just give an overview of where we are today and how we got here, and why I think you should be using this technology, right? So now let's see if this thing will actually get going. There we go. So without further ado, you may know me from my product Document Exchange, which goes back indeed quite a long way in the DNN history. Like I mentioned, DNN leadership team, dev lead, DNN Connect, which I preside over with a group of friends here in Europe. I do the core blog module currently. I've dabbled in the docs project. KQTils, I've rewritten part of been involved in the rewrite of the way that the actual platform is built, and what you will find on GitHub as well, and some other modules, various modules that you can find out there. But to kind of set the stage, for me, it's obvious, and I think for anyone who's been with the project for any length of time, that things have really changed over time. So and I wanted to break that down into various aspects of things that have changed, because it's not just one thing that has changed. So the underlying technology has changed a lot. The way we develop has changed a lot. The market into which we sell has changed a lot, and also the way we organize DNN has changed a lot. So all of those things put together means that it's very hard to compare the current development experience to the development experience back in 2003. And I hope that after this presentation, that will be quite clear why that is. So if we take it, I decided to break it down into three segments: the history of DNN. So 2002 to 2008 is kind of the early days of DNN before they were incorporated and got VC money. Then 2008 to 2018 was the DNN Corp days, and then after that, we are in our current incarnation of DNN. So when you think back to that first stage, we were really developing always for a desktop experience. And I mean, Netscape was still kind of a thing in the early days. If you have gray hair like me, you'll remember that name. The next stage was the big surge in responsive design, and can we the whole controversy around Internet Explorer. The underlying technology, that I think those are the two very significant parts of web development that were going on in terms of what people had. They started switching to mobile devices, and in the browser wars, it was very clear that Internet Explorer was on the losing side. It was not going to win the battle in the long run, and so it was going to be Chrome and Firefox and Safari moving forward. And now if there's one thing I can highlight, I think cloud in terms of the underlying technology is an important part of important change that we've seen over the past few years. In terms of development, it's quite interesting if you think back to where we started and where we are now. So when we started, everything was just web forms. We were in VB. For those of you who still remember that, basically we're doing a lot about HTML and CSS. Visual Studio still had that web forms design thing where if you switched over your viewer to design and then switched it back to HTML, it absolutely massacred all your HTML. And we were, SourceForge was the leading kind of place where you had your source code, and we had it on, where was it again? Can't remember the name of it. That also died. Then
Codeplex.
Thank you, Codeplex. As I was writing these slides, I was like, okay, didn't do the research, but Codeplex. Thank you, David. These things have since all but died. Of course, HTML, CSS is still there, but less so at the forefront. And what we saw in that second period is, first of all, we switched to C#, all of us, and all of a sudden, Microsoft kicked itself into gear and started coming out with MVC, MVVM, etc. for the desktop products, and Xamarin became a thing, right? Started to develop for mobile platform. But most interestingly, actually, I think it's the incredible evolution we've seen, technology-wise on the front end. JavaScript with the appearance of jQuery at the beginning, and then later React, Angular. It was an amazing time for us, but also very confusing because all of that happened at the front end, of course, and we were used to doing stuff mostly on the back end and just serving out HTML and CSS. And if on the right, I've posted a number of things that of terms that we see floating around now. It's the whole .NET Core or .NET 5 thing that's going on about architecture, clean architecture. We see it coming more and more. Then in terms of the JavaScript environment, it hasn't stopped at React and Angular. Of course, they're now competing rendering frameworks. There's also stuff to bridge to mobile using JavaScript. And the way we organize projects, so we manage projects in DevOps and stuff in Azure DevOps, for instance, and similar technologies. This has also really impacted the lives of developers and how they come to, and it's important to realize this because that's how they come to the platform, of course, and look at what we're doing. In terms of the market, I think when we began, a lot of our customers were, all they said was just make me a website, right? It's the many small companies still had absolutely no web presence back in the early 2000s. And there are a whole ton of us that made a killing back in the day, supplying small businesses with an easily configurable website based on DNN, and we could replicate it because of the portal virtualization that DNN has always had, and I think it was a fantastic time, definitely for DNN as a CMS. Then moving to the second phase, this began to shift because all of a sudden the competition became really diverse, really. I've named a few. Like there's competition who do the same thing as CMS does, but as a SaaS solution, so Wix or Squarespace. You have SaaS solutions that do just one thing very well, Flickr or Google Drive for storing documents. And these started to kind of eat away at that market that we were servicing, I think, in the first phase, definitely. And the core question of small business coming at us in this period is like, hey, I want a cool website that is, of course, mobile, and now all of a sudden, animation and video is becoming more and more, a thing. It has to look really, really awesome, etc. And now I think where we are today is one of the key things is that just about everything seems to be free. So that also impacts heavily the way we market our work. And more and more solutions that tend to be integrated with backends. There's a much more, with the advent of microservices, there's much more integration to be done with different things that companies have bought into. It's like, oh, we've got this going on with that provider, and they've got an API, and how about you bolt what I have here onto that, please, right? So that is I think something that has become more prevalent recently. And then in terms of DNN, well, we've gone from open source, the benevolent dictator model, where the dictator in question was Sean Walker. The API development, I felt at the time was rather opaque. It was more or less what they decided needed to be done, but that wasn't a very transparent process. I remember approaching the core team and in the day when I had an idea, it's like, hey, how about we do this way? And the answer was, sure, code it and we'll have a look at it. And I felt that was very discouraging to me as a developer, because I didn't know, first of all, if I could code well enough to satisfy their code quality demands that they might have. And secondly, of course, I had no idea if that feature was going to be, if tomorrow all of a sudden Sean woke up and thought, well, actually, we don't want that feature, so it's out. So I've always felt very strongly about, since that moment, about how an open source project should be transparent, more transparent, at least, right, in its decision making. And then we shift to the second phase. So now we have DNN Corp, and it becomes a freemium model. We get DNN Platform as a byproduct, basically, of the development of Evoke. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that at this point in time, the API inside DNN just explodes. There is so much code that's being added. It's insane. And all of that to support features in Evoke. So some of the code that we see drift into the platform, we are not told what it's for. We just left kind of deciphering it. Like, oh, okay, this does that. Okay, don't know what for, but it's there. And sometimes great features, right, that we still use today. But I would say the frustration was obviously something that was also very indicative of this period. It was a very antagonistic relationship between the community and Corp, because they had a commercial business to run, and they were basing their decisions on where to take DNN based on that business. And of course, that's going to lead to acrimony with the community. So that ended with the sale of the IP to ESW, and ESW then handed it over to the community and said, okay, well, you guys just drive the the open source part, and we'll just go our own way and do with Evoke whatever we want. But you do whatever you want. And I think that has been a huge boost to the community. And I doubt we'd all be sitting here chatting with each other if it wasn't for that, right? And so here we are today. I would say in terms of module development, and I want to segue into what it means to develop an extension for DNN. I think what is central for anyone to understand is that DNN has tried to not force people down one specific development path. In part also because they needed to always support older development methods like the web forms development pattern. But also because any decision in this landscape where all of a sudden JavaScript frameworks are exploding all over the place, any decision you would make to favor one over the other is going to be a very controversial decision. So we have three main module development approaches: the MVC module, the SPA module, and the web forms module. There are various other extension types, but those are the three extension types that will surface a module through DNN. And really, it's very hard to see how you could not do your thing with one of those three development patterns. So there's no, this is the way to develop a module, but there is a way to develop a module. And anyone who starts to, comes up and says, I have the way to do this, like, yeah, well, it makes you very humble when you see how many different development patterns there are out there. So basically you can choose your backend technology, choose any .NET stuff that you want to create your code behind. You choose your DNN embedding, like how you want to surface that through the DNN rendering pipeline. You can then choose whatever technology you want on the front side. Like I'm going to use React or Angular or Vue. And importantly also, I mean, you can, how you manage and build your stuff, that's up to you as well. I mean, there's so many different ways now to do that it's pointless for me to say, well, this is the way you should do it, right? So looking at how you would decide, like when coming to a project, like what the thought process is from the perspective of a DNN extension developer. I quickly classified projects into like three categories here. So there's the simple website. So that is what we did in the early days a lot. A company, club or whatever that wants a website. Hey, can you make us a website? Sure, I can make you a website. A light web application where you already have something running which interacts with the user. Think, for instance, of a shop. I'm not saying that it's not complex, but it's just a single application, let's say. Or complex web application where all of a sudden you're integrated with a business process happening at a company, and it kind of branches out into various parts of the web application. And when it comes to the website, to me personally anyway, they're often unrewarding tasks because you're competing against already fairly low cost SaaS offerings out there that exist. I do it mostly for free for clubs that I'm part of, associations, that kind of work, or because it's a friendly company that that does something for me, I do that for them, etc. That's reasons to get into it. But really, of course, if they're going to be paying me, the first question I need to ask myself is like, hey, shouldn't they just be using Squarespace for this if they want to make some of this stuff? It is also a domain where you could potentially solve things that are slightly more complex with just a structured content solution and say, okay, well, I'm just going to throw too sexy content in here because they just need to manage this, the editing the editing experience I'm going to improve here for this page, etc. But really, yeah, those are my thoughts about a website, and feel free to to chime in and disagree with me there. But yeah, the light web app. So when it's like a targeted, let's say, one kind of application, you could think also of for instance, a website for a photographer who wants to manage his portfolio and surface that through the website. You're continuously competing with an ever-changing landscape of SaaS offerings that target just one specific group, right? There's a lot of SaaS offerings out there that target one specific application. And every day there tends to be a new one. It never ceases to amaze me what we have, what exists out there. So yeah, it could be like, this is where when I'm talking to a customer who's interested in this, I talk about what I would call the final 10% of customization. So most of these SaaS offerings will cover their needs to a varying degree, but it's rarely 100%, right? It's rarely how they experience the world, how they see things. But the photographer in question might just want to organize his pictures differently than the SaaS offerings that are out there. And that's where I come in. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, that I can do for you, that it works exactly the way you want it to work, right? Then all of a sudden we have a case for building it out in DNN. And the complex web app. So in my opinion, this is where DNN really shines, because it's got such a rich API, and we are already in the Microsoft zone with .NET, so integrations are often just really easy to do. As a very powerful technology. It's also easy to share across a team if you have to work with other people, because it's not a very hard technology to grasp. Yeah, I would say, like I mentioned here, I just think the framework, the DNN framework, is just really, really flexible and accommodating to all kinds of situations that you can have. But yeah, the caveat is the learning curve to learn how to develop complex solutions in DNN, that can be steep, right? If you think you're just going to stamp out one of the module templates for a web forms module and that'll be it, no, that's where your learning starts. There's a lot to be discovered within the DNN API. But once you're familiar with the DNN API, there is so much benefit you can get from it. Design considerations. So as a developer, customer comes to you, you're trying to kind of piece things together, structure their world into the web experience that they're looking for. When it comes to translating that into concrete modules, extensions that you're going to develop, one of the first things that is at the forefront of your mind is, what is the scope of this data we're talking about? Is this going to be portal scoped data, like across we're going to share data that goes across different pages on the portal, or is the data scoped to a single module? Or is the scope basically going to be across the platform, and we're going to share that across different portals? That also happens, by the way. I also have a project where that is the case. And that defines or that kind of drives a lot of decisions about how you're going to set up your project with different modules for DNN. Whether you're going to spread it out over pages, like I said, if you have, you might end up with portal scoped solution. So obviously you're going to have modules that sit probably on different pages of the website, and they all look at the same data. Alternatively, you may decide to surface everything through a single page application, right? And basically just have DNN as a rendering box for a blob of HTML, bolt all your JavaScript onto it, and just talk to the web API after that. One thing that I have discovered in doing that, I mean, there are definitely use cases for this. So in this case, you'd be using, for instance, a router, right, on the front end. One thing I did run into is that the DNN login doesn't preserve what is behind a hashtag in a URL. So what this means is if you've designed your fabulous web application and you're using some kind of a router, and the router usually uses the hashtag to kind of route stuff on the front end, on the browser. If you would copy your URL saying, okay, well, I'm looking at this, and you paste that in an email, the other person clicks on it, has to log in first, they will not see the page you're actually referring to. And that's so to me, the pure SPA solutions are great to a certain level, but when you start to use routers as well, it can become a little bit brittle, let's say, in experience. You may get emails from the customer saying, hey, they just clicked on this link, they don't see what I see, how come? And yeah, there's certain limitations to that. Then I think one aspect to look at is obviously permissions and security of data. So looking at what data is for whom and what kinds of roles are going to be defined inside a whole application. And that will define also where, if you're going to, for instance, scope something to just a single module, say, okay, this module is for this type of actor. Or I also worked on a project where one site was for one particular actor, one portal was for one actor, and another portal for another actor. And how you then secure the backend to make sure that even if people would know everything about this application and would be able to forge the URLs, etc., they will not be able to penetrate the web API endpoints to get to data that doesn't belong to them. Right? That is, of course, something that is of primary concern in the design of your application. And then the final point I mentioned, the scope of design. So what we see, and this tends to get more complex as well, especially when you're selling a module, for instance, commercially online, is the interplay of the module and the skin. Now, we know we can scope CSS to, just to be part of a module, but you want your look and feel of the module to correspond basically to what the whole website does. So especially when we're talking about a larger, more complex web app, I would actually do the skin together with it, basically, to preserve a consistency of the look and feel of both the modules and the skin, and to also avoid having to jump through a whole tons of hoops, because I know I've made a decision to go with Bootstrap 4 for the skin. So then I can just use those classes in the module and be done with it, and have a consistent look and feel across the site. All right, I am drawing it almost to a close. I think I've droned on for half an hour. I'll wrap this up soon. So things to keep in mind when developing: use NuGet. So that's the way to do it. It's been a bit of a mess in the past, NuGet, but I believe the latest packages are fairly good to develop against. So when it's all possible, use the NuGet packages instead of direct references. Do DLLs in your project. Don't use the React Common Library. That's a thing we can we need to reiterate. The React Common Library was meant to help people design persona bar extensions, but it's a very large React project that we within the core team, that this is a different part of me. So in the technology aspect, the technology part of the team, we find it very hard to maintain this code, and we want to go a different route in the future than the React Common Library. So we would discourage the use of using that React Common Library for your persona bar projects. Instead, what I ended up doing in a project recently is to mimic the DNN look of the persona bar and roll your own components in React to do the same thing. It's simple enough when it's just text boxes and buttons and whatnot, and that's in any case most of what I've been working on. If you're new, but even if you're not new, I mean, look at other DNN projects. If you see, because now there's so many different ways to develop. It's always good if you find an online on GitHub a module that is of a certain complexity to see how that person solved certain issues. And then I encourage you to wrap your head around like how the DNN API works and build your own layers. So for instance, for me, that started already in the early days with the web forms projects. You had a portal module base, which was a class that sat underneath every module. So basically your ASCX inherited from that. But of course, it was trivially easy to make your own class, my portal module base, inherit from that, and then start hard coding the settings, for instance, for the application. Meaning your settings become much more consistent throughout your applications, and you're not doing any more deserialization and serialization throughout your code. Your code becomes a lot cleaner. Currently, what I would do in most projects is roll my own security layer built on top of DNN security layer for web API. So my web API methods have their own attribute, and that attribute inherits from DNN's authorization attribute, but I roll my own hard code, the different roles that I have for the application into it. It makes it very clear in the code who can access certain web API endpoints. Again, once you kind of have seen this code work, you've delved into the DNN code and see how it's how it layers on top of .NET. It becomes very easy for you to layer on top of that and then create your own more solid foundation for your module. Especially when things get very complex, that's it is really helpful. Structured content versus custom modules. So this is a bit of a pet peeve for me, but obviously, there's now, I don't know how many structured content solutions out there, right? You've got 2sexy, I mentioned before. You've got liquid content that was done by DNN. You've got open content off the top of my head. You've got Xmod is still going strong. Action forums, open forums, whatever, various commercial solutions and free solutions out there. They all aim to do the same thing. And I've actually gone down this path in the early days of DNN myself, which is there's a recurring question like, hey, we've got a table of data here. I'd like to surface it through DNN. How do I do that? Well, you can make a generic solution where you just define what that table looks like, and then that builds up its UI based on that definition. But what you see is when the solution starts to become more complex, that becomes increasingly more complex. And because you want to preserve a certain kind of flexibility, all of a sudden that structured content solution becomes really, really complex. And the project I've been involved in that use structured content solutions, what they run into is at some point it becomes so complex, you're actually learning this new framework that sits on top of DNN. And I'm like, wow, that would have been way easier to do in a custom module, especially if you use code templating, for instance, right? You've got your databases, you've got what we used to have CodeSmith back in the day. I use another solution now, but just take some templates, take the table, generate my my data layer out of that, and I'm almost done. I almost have it on screen. So for me, it really depends how, for the structured content solution, how far you should take that. Get your build process right, because being able to build fast is key in our market today. So having your build process there, it's just something that saves your day. Invest some time in that. Definitely invest time in that. Currently, I use Cake Build. I have a project on GitHub, and that's on NuGet called dnn.cakeutils. And the way that works is that you can define a manifest of DNN in a JSON file, and you basically highlight the important parts of your module, and the cakeutils will pick that up, generate the proper manifest for it by looking at the project and saying, okay, well, these, I will define an assembly node, I will define the all the different parts of it, and just wrap it up. And you can use that actually to build very more complex solutions where you have multiple packages inside a single package. That is how I package my most complex projects nowadays. DevOps and testing. So that's the way that currently, all teams are heading. It's there. Use it. And I would say, to round this part off is, automation is your friend. Just automate stuff to increase your effectiveness, your efficiency. And with that, I would like to open up the floor to any questions that you may have or frustrations.
I didn't see you posted in the chat, but feel free to come off mic and ask this.
Peter, I was going to say thank you for your phrasing and your structuring of this history and timeline. I think that some of the high-level overview that we can share with clients and people who we're presenting DNN to about that history with DNN Corp all the way to ESW and now today. I'll be passing people to this video in the future. That was very well handled and described both some of the static or the friction that's been there in the past, but also the clean future we have ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we have one question. Will wants to know if you could just do all that again from the top, please.
Well, what I mean, there is. I mean, obviously we wish we didn't need sleep, or we didn't need to do other stuff in our lives than this. But if I would have the time, I would love to present on like bits and pieces of that more in depth with code examples. I just brushed over it, but some of my latest thinking about module development can be found in the DNN Connect conference project on GitHub. I think that's the most up-to-date project that I have on GitHub with my current coding approach.
I'll mention this too, for those that don't know. I know it's becoming a bit outdated, but it still has a lot of relevant information in it. Is Peter did a video series on YouTube with his DNN. What was it? What did you call yourself? DNN?
Stay-at-home DNNer.
Yeah, stay-at-home DNNer. That's it. Yeah, so look him up on YouTube.
So it is very 2020.
He's got a great video series that's actually nice and short and concise, and it breaks up how to actually build DNN platform and work with that. So even if you're not contributing to the core, offering, it's actually really good to help you learn how things work, and it'll help you in your own module development as well. So be sure to check that out.
Definitely, it's very important if you're trying to drill down into bugs that you feel are maybe not part of your solution that you're doing, but part of DNN. And for that, it's indispensable that you have a debug version of DNN running. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to find out.
Exactly. Do we have any other questions? Silence is golden.
Silence is golden. That's good. It must mean people are happily coding DNN, and the level of frustration is a lot lower than I thought it would be. That's I'll chalk that up as a win.
That sounds like a good interpretation of that.
Even though I'm pulling my hair out every day.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, Peter, thanks for.
I can tell.
Thanks for coming in
Yeah,
and presenting this to us. It's a good overview of kind of the history and where we are today, and I'm sure this will be referenced for months to come. So thank you for doing that. I guess and good night if you need to go to sleep. I know it's
it's okay. We're still it's almost 10 p.m. so it's fine.
Okay, good. Well, next up, I hope everybody enjoyed that. Next up, we have Alessandra Davies, who is our very own DNN diva. So hold on to your seats because you're ready for a ride. She's gonna take it on here. So, Alessandra, enjoy presenting. I know you've been in the DNN community quite some time and have done presentations, and this might be a slightly modified presentation from, I think, your DNN Summit. So if anybody missed her session there and want to see this, you've come to the right place. So take it on, Alessandra.
Yeah, it's pretty much going to be the same thing, only I'm going to speak twice as fast. So it's not going to be pretty. Okay, well, it's me, DNN Diva. Yay, everybody knows. DNN Dave over there was the one that actually came up with this nickname, and I just stole it and made it mine because I'm like that. All right, so first I'm going to talk today a little bit about liquid content components, pretty much structured content in general, which is the joy of my life because clients' sticky fingers do not screw up my code. And I'm not even a DNN editor that sometimes decides to add some code in there that nobody asked them to, or overfix things. So I'm pretty much trying to make it content for dummies, so it's as easy as possible for the end user to use. Everybody will always need a little bit of HTML here and there, but if you mostly can just enter, this is my title, this is my picture, this is my content, here I'm gonna put a link. It's much easier for the client to not make that break than if we actually just give them super explained HTML template to put on. So I'm just gonna start here by sharing the screen of Doom. Yes, do not notice the recycled logo. I tried to change, but the logo that was there on my, am I sharing the right screen? Is this one?
We are seeing your picture there. So
yes, that's the correct one. Because I was kind of like, which one am I showing here? All right.
You're good. We see.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a JPEG with the white background, and I'm like, it's gonna look ugly here, so I just left the other logo here. So okay, pretty much structured content. It's I bet everybody here already knows about that, but it's pretty much you get an HTML and replace it with tokens. So when you have to repeat that, you can have the same thing again, just with another title, another position, and another image, and it will always display nicely without you having to enter something that is a little bit too verbose in here to enter and having to remember details, like automatically my character name gonna go in the image tag and gonna go my title here as well as I want and such. So the way I do this, I usually look at the layout or even an already existing HTML content, and I kind of break it down, like what is in here that we can make it as what's going to be the header, what's going to be the repeating part of it, because a lot of things have repetition, and what it's going to be an asset like an image or a document link, or what is going to be a link, what's going to be a list, or even a reference to another object that's going to be entering in here for be able to analyze and get what is the best field that I can use to make this form. Because that's what you have on structured content. You have your form and your fields. That's pretty much where you organize all the data that's going to be entered later. You're going to have the data entry itself, and you're going to have the presentation. So the three things that you need to have. So in here, we're going to have to refresh, because I don't know why my icons didn't show in here. Let's try one more time. Hello.
Oh, the demo gods are not smiling on you.
3 hours later.
This is where the point where the DNN API is not working because because
No,
look,
I
Yeah,
think-
this is why to sexy content. I'm not
No, Alessandra, are you logged out?
I'm starting to think that might be happening. Let me just go here again. Seriously?
Okay.
Oh my God.
right.
There we go.
Oh,
We're
there you go.
here. There you go. So let's take a look at, actually wanted to go here. I'm gonna keep on this page so it doesn't disappear again. Okay, so that's the items that we have. We're gonna have our content types that pretty much will define what we need. Those first ones here are not changeable. They come automatically with any installation of the evoke content, liquid content. So I'm gonna give an example with what I have with the character. So I'll have a character name. I'm gonna have an anchor level that I decide to do with numbers. So this is a number field. We're gonna have an upload asset for the image, a simple input text for the designation and for the tagline. For the about, I may want to put a little bold. I may want to put a little link somewhere. So I'm gonna use the rich content. For the slider image, so I have all of different items that I actually added in here. And practically with this one content type, I can achieve a whole different looks and layouts from the same data that was entered in the beginning. So to say I'm not using just one content type in here, I'm cheating just a little bit because I have a one content type and a one content type that is pretty much a group of the content of the other content types, that I enter for character. So somewhere I'm gonna have to enter the name, the image, the background image for the slider, image for each one of them, the character traits, so I can actually separate them and group them separately. I'm gonna have some more definition if, like, you know, is she a female, is she a bird, is she the color and the traits they have in the background here, because she lives on the bird island, she has the bird island on the background. And again, here we have here, like, you know, who lives in Pig Island, who lives in Bird Island. And all of this is pretty much coming from the one content type that I created. I should have showed this one here first. And again, this one here is not showing again. What's going on? Let's just go back to the first page where everything is showing as it should. So I kind of showed a little bit out of order. Okay, so now this will make a little bit more sense. We have the angle level and all the data that I need for each one of them. For, like, you know, coloring, I have the colors available in it as something that you already know what the answer is going to be. Maybe better for you to make a list for the user to choose from. If it's either one or another, although nowadays it's kind of halfway here, halfway there. So maybe you can put another order in here if you need to. So you can enter the options and how each item is going to be able to be data entered in the end. So from here, I'm just going to show the character group. Pretty much what I have in here, I'm just saying, give me a multi-reference of the other character type. That's pretty much what I have in here. So I can do a list of specific characters that I want on this listing. So this is why I say it's 1.5. Again, content. Every single one of them, I pretty much entering the name, angle level, the image, designations. This one here, for instance, you don't have to actually enter for something that you're not gonna use. You can have an option that would be a default image in the background, which is, for instance, what I do on my slide. One of my characters do not have an image. So there's a default image that shows when there's no slider image entered. Again, the location, the coloring, gender, anger or not, if it has eyebrows or not. Pretty much you fill out the form for every single item that you have. So I have, let's get out here. Oh, no, close. So I have all the characters that I have, all my Angry Birds that have been entered, and each one of them have their own image. Hello, hey. Totally trolling me this. Oh, there you go. Internet so slow. Let's pretend we can see the whole image. You know, different text, but in the end of the day, they all gonna have a designation. They all gonna have a tagline. So this is like the organization of the data before you even enter the data. And in this case, the best thing you can do is really, really plan before you build this, because every time you have to do a change on the original content type, you're probably gonna have to open, save every single content type, every single content item that you enter to kind of nudge database so they know, oh, there's another column here now that wasn't here before, and we can update for that. Okay, so next thing that we have in here is the group. That's pretty much, as I said before, a list. So in this one here, I pretty much just listing all my characters. Click, 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 click. Okay, there you go. Everybody's here. So everybody I have entered in here because I want this one here to be everyone. I could have done this differently, but I decided to do it like this because I wanted some to have all of them, some to not have. And I have one for just the very Angry Birds. And I pretty much just use those on the slider. And I'm picking which ones I want in there. All right, and then next step is pretty much creating your visualizer. Visualizer is nothing more than a template with tokens. Each one of the fields that we have on the content type form will create a token. And then pretty much you're gonna have your token for title. So everywhere you put the title, That's where the title is going to be displayed. So pretty much it's nothing more than a simple template where we use the tokens for the character name, for the designation, as I'll have a bar here on liquid content. And there's some filtering that you can do. But as guys here is the profile image. If I just use the profile image, it's going to generate my whole image tag, which I'm not going to be able to control because I want to say, oh, this one here has a class. So I prefer to use it just the URL, so I can actually say, oh, this is the out tag that I want for this image. This is the class that I want to put. So I personally rather break it down and build it from the elements. And the same thing in here, like if you have a content detail that you can, is one of the options that you have. So if I do have a content details URL, then show my button. If I don't have this whole block is not going to show at all. So you have a lot of if and else's and in ways to filter the content that you want in there. This one here is a very simple one. You do have a header, a middle bit that is usually the repeating part of it, and a footer that you can use. In here I'm using, again, if I do have paginating page, that is if I have a link to the tails and there's more than a certain number of items per page, then they will display my paging. If not, it's not going to show at all. And there's nothing here in the header. You can also, if you're doing specifically styles and for that specific template, you can actually just add them in here. I personally like putting everything together on the theme, because there's one less thing that fingers will not be able to touch. And again, scripts, if you need to run something in here. The one caveat we have in here is that the tokens just work in certain places. You cannot use tokens on the script or on the style, which is very annoying in my opinion. And on header and footer, you can only use a certain type of tokens, pretty much pagination related things. And again, on the footer, the same thing. But the tokens that you created, they are only going to be allowed here on the list. So you're going to have the slug that very good for IDs, people. If you don't know, this is because the slugs are unique for each content item. So it's great when you need to do tabs or sliders that need to be identified by ID. So you do have some support functions for the, like, if you are using a list of detail, that will give you the URL to the details and the current page URL as well. And all the other ones gonna be pretty much your own created tokens. They usually are, I'm gonna say that very slowly, camel cased. There you go. Because I used some other camel reference one day in a meeting and it didn't come out right. So it's gonna be about, and you can see the other one here is gonna be content, and then the first large, oh my God, what is the opposite of low cap? The big letters. There you go, uppercase. The uppercase and then
uppercase and lowercase.
Thank you. Uppercase and lowercase as the beginning of each letter, except for the first one. And that's how you pretty much build. So this is also one of the reasons that after you did your first form, is a time to go and check that the name of your items are correct. Because if at the moment that you created your first content item, that you enter the data, you cannot really change the name of anything that is on the content type. And if you have to change it, you're pretty much gonna have to delete that and create a new field and have to edit everything again. So again, try to keep it tidy so you don't end up with the weird, not very self-explaining token in here. But it's great when you can say character name and voila, it is actually the character name. and not character name 37, because seriously, that's just OCD. I cannot deal with that. And that's pretty much it. Okay, that's pretty much it for the, you have the name, you have your useless icon that you cannot change whatsoever. I don't even know what this is here. And this is where you actually choose the type of the content that you're creating. Okay, so, okay, API keys. One another way of adding data that is not manually entered like in the content is actually using an API key. I know the theory, but I do, it's like under the hood, that's too much carburetor inside of the car. I just polished the windshield. But it's pretty much, for you guys that know about APIs and databases, just saying get this field from that field and that column, and that's the title, and it will give you the title. That's the data that's going to be entered. So you're still going to have to create your content type, and then you just do the correlation of the API key. And again, that's the theory. Don't ask me how that's done, because that's why the backend developers are for. Love you guys. Okay, what else? I think that's pretty much the components that we have. And then we do have the visualizer types, which you have all of those. You have the visualized templates and you have the visualizer types. You can have a simple content item, which is pretty much one item, but you can also have a little repeater going on in there if you had some content on your header and on your footer. So it's just gonna basic repeat something simple. That will be no problem. You do have the option of the list. That's pretty much, you're doing the repeating of that middle bit. That's when you usually use the groups that I call groups, which is real reference to another reference object, which is simply another content item. So in the content character group, I'm referring the content type character. You do have the listing detail that is in the same page. You click in one and it will just open that second template in the same page, just adding some URL filtering in here. And you do have the list. You can also have the list and details in different pages. So let's just go here. Now they loaded. I don't understand this. So, okay, so this is the same content item that in this one here, I have the look of the card that I just using the profile picture, the name, and the designation. And this one here is something more detailed. I'm giving the anger level. I'm saying if it's a male, a bird, or it's a color, what are the traits of them? This is my tagline. This is my about me. And again, in the background, I have the where he lives, which is the bird island. And I can have the grid. Pretty much, again, just like the first one card, the only difference, I also have a little banner here that I also have my anger level. And again, that's the card grid with the multiple selection. This is not the list. This is the content item, just repetition. So you to just repeat everything that I put on there, which you can also achieve with list. But this one here is all using the content, the visualizer type content item, which is the basic one. I know they should have come up with a different name. They do that on purpose, so I mistake my names, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so we have the list and detail. List and detail, okay, where I can come here and say like, oh, wow, what are the details here for bomb? And then I will just, is the same page, I'm still on list detail. It will just add the slug I was telling you guys about, that they are unique for every item in there. So if I come here and I put Matilda, that's what they will show, Matilda. Okay, again, it's a black bird, it's a bird, it's male, angry, has eyebrows, etc., etc. So let's go back to our main page here. So each one of these have their own detailed view. So in here, pretty much what I have is the template, the visualizer for the list view and the visualizer for the detail view, all in the same page. And the other one that we have is just when you have the list and the detail separate. So if you go to the list page, again, I'm gonna have the simple one, that this one here is not showing the details, and this one here are showing the details. So let's go take a look at Petunia. You'll notice that this one here will open on the detail page and show Petunia again, / Petunia, the slug there. If I come here and go straight to the detail page, because I do not have a slug in here, it will just show nothing in there. So sometimes you can use that. I use that on one of the templates that I have to have. In some cases, you had something showing, something not. That would just not show anything on that particular detail. But when it had what I needed to have to show, it would show, because it was the same content there on the type, on the URL. So pretty much the detail page will not show anything unless you have a slug in there. And again, you can have the simple list, and you can have a detailed target set. And how do you do that, Alessandra, you may ask? I will explain that to you. Let's just go in edit mode. Somebody have to tell me when it's time to stop talking here. So, okay. So if I'm gonna here, manage visualizer settings. To take it to the beginning, when you add the visualizer on any page, you're gonna run through this. You choose what is the type of the content you have. In this case, it's gonna be list. And then I choose what is the content type that I'm using, character. And then I choose the type, the template that I want. All of this can be chosen for here. I'm using the grid because I want to go from grid to that detail. And okay, and then in here you can actually see everybody that I put in there. You can also, because this is list, you can also do some filtering, but only by fields that are pretty much text input. I think date you can also do. Now, I tried to do that with radio one time. They didn't find it. You see that they don't have trait in here available. But I can say like tagline, or I can also have tags themselves. In case in here, I actually would just show me the female ones. So if I take them out here, they're gonna show me everybody. So if I go pig, do I have pig? No, pig is not a thing. Let me see, featured. Green, I just want green characters. They're just gonna show me the green characters, because those again are text that you can also add that I didn't show, but I should have. On each content item, when you enter, you have a tab that you can put that. This has nothing to do with Google optimization formatting. This is purely for internal organization of content. So that's a good thing that you can say, okay, I want everybody that is, I don't know, holding an umbrella. You just put umbrella. And so you're gonna have everybody that's listed here, people that have the picture that are holding umbrellas, and so on. I'm just gonna go back to female because it has to be all tidy. And again, you can put ascending or descending by character name. So again, if I go here and I put by name is the content item name, by the way, that they should actually put it here, but they don't. And that's why I personally do not like creating fields called name, because when you get in here, you don't know if the name is your name or if the content item name. So I try to avoid that. So I usually go for the character name, and I want it to be ascending now instead of descending. So they're gonna show me Matilda at first. Now when they refresh, 3 hours later, there you go. And this is something that you can do. And by the way, you can also do a lot of that filtering with the templates as well, with the visualizer templates. You can actually just enter, hey, filter this by this. There's some coding that you have to to insert in there to be able to achieve that, but it's completely doable. Okay. Yeah, trying to close this 3 days later. It was running so fast this morning. I read to all the pages so it would be fast, and you're doing this, trolling me.
That's the way it goes.
Always. It's because David is looking. That's why. I'm gonna go to the other page. Okay. So those are the types of the content template, visualizer template that I created in here. Pretty much about the one that we have here on the front, and I actually kind of entered a little helper in here. So this is what is visualizer type, is a list, content type, what is the visualizer, and what are the settings that I added for each one of them. Again, in here, so you have the bright colors, you have the young ones, you have the angry ones. So you see like what, because it's not just the different, you can filter and you can change stuff, and like, you know, for instance, if you go here, you don't have a filling code, this thing here would simply disappear and the traits would go to the left in there, and it would not look like empty. And of course, this one, it has to be all kind of like planned and done correctly in HTML before you put it in here. So pretty much if you know HTML and you know how the filters to use, you can do this. It's not hard. Looks hard, but it's not at all. And then I ran out of a job. Okay. I think that's pretty much it. I think the last thing that I can show here is, okay, our caveats. I never know how to say that. The main problem that I have in here, I actually should add another one in here, is one is that you cannot do nested reference objects. So you cannot do a reference to an object that has another object. It would the third level object would just not be displayed at all. The other thing that you have here is when you have lists on the page. For instance, one here, this is a list that does not have paging, and I just have 2 elements. This list here has more than 2 elements, and I do have paging. So what happened is when I go on page 2, there's nothing here because there's nothing here on my, I do not have a page 2. So it's pretty much filtering this to show my second page, and it doesn't work because I don't have a second page on this one here. So pretty much if you have to use lists, once a page, unless you're not using paging. So if you have to use paging, you can only have 1 listing. And it's the same thing for the, let's go back here. Is it the same for the same reason that the list detail and on the tail will do. Well, for instance, we have the details here that we're not showing, and we have all this. Like, great. So I guess we're like, okay, just I want to see Matilda, which will add my slug for Matilda in here. I break the interwebs because it goes crazy. Like, where is Matilda? I cannot do it. Pretty much, it breaks. It looks like it's breaking because I have a non-existing element of this list, that list, and the other list that doesn't exist because it's not there. If I go to somewhere that everybody has more details, then it's fine. I see everything that I should. But if it's some element that is not in common with all the other lists on that page, you will have problems. So pretty much just 1 list, or else the page is gonna look like it's broken. I do have as well here some filterings that I use. I already found out some of them are not completely correct, but it just worked. Some of them, when you're using on the reference object, you have to use empty. When you're using a reference object, you have to say equals empty quotes. Do not know why. It is what it is. So I do have some go-to that I use a lot that I kind of tend to put in here. Sometimes you have to create a little variable That was like a backender that actually taught me that. And I was like, ooh, this is how it's done. Because I kept trying to do this, like the multiple choice for the radio, and it just would not accept it. I didn't realize that I actually had to do this. And again, if you have a resource type of a type that contain the words video in it, etc., etc. And this is the paging that I created that I personally think is better than the one that is the automatically paging, and it's prettier. And that's it. Okay, I'm done. Just in time.
Fantastic, Alessandra.
All right, questions? None. Okay, bye.
So, Alessandra, is it true? I guess this is using some form of Shopify's liquid syntax.
Yes, actually, it does use liquid. That's basic. Actually, I don't even have in here. This is the link for the evoke page and source and .liquid. But I have to say, the most of the banging on the wall, I have to make this work. Why is this not working? Situations, I actually found answers on the Shopify, you know, help and forums and everything. And I, with a heavy heart, I have to say that this could be so much better than what it is. It's kind of, they got to a point that is like, okay, it's good enough. Let's stop there.
Yeah.
Why? Sometimes I
think one of the complaints is that this was a version 1 type of release, and it hasn't been added to or improved since then.
Oh God, pet peeve number 55 for me. It's like, why? And sometimes I know what I want to do, and I found it. I'm like, oh, I found it in Shopify, and I put in here, and it just doesn't work. It's so frustrating.
Alessandra, can you post the links to those, or are you planning to make this example site public so that we can show our friends all the Angry Birds fun we've had today?
The thing is, this site is about to die because I had I think I have it till like the end of June, but I have no problem. But like, you know, if somebody wants to contact me, I'll get you guys a login so you can go in and take a look. Unfortunately, that's another pet peeve. You cannot export the content that you created on Evoke content. I cannot, like, short of saving each page as an HTML, you can make it another. You cannot export the content items that you enter. You cannot export.
Well, I mean, you kind of can.
You can, and you can also
export.
How? You can also back up your whole DNN instance and then query your full set of data and then record it. And there are ways for you to then migrate it.
There's other ways too that you can export. You can use the export import feature in Evoke. Theoretically, you can do that. Export it from one to another, and just export the content itself. But that's hit or miss on how it works.
I think it would add the content in there, but I know you can export the visualizers templates themselves, and that will come together with the content type and everything. But the content items bit is the one that I never really did, because it's in a way it's a separate database, or that's for the big kahunas, backhanders over there. It's like carburetor stuff. I don't care. My nails are not gonna be filled with oil, internet oil. But it's actually very good to know, because sometimes I go like, I would like to save the site because it's, I kind of save this bit in here. And of course I have, because I'm a little bit of a code hoarder, so I have all the visualizers that I created, but I will literally have to recreate the form or export at least the items in here for the templates. You can actually come here and no, you can import visualizer, but where? Oh no, you can export. How? Where?
Yeah, I don't think you can export it here.
Oh, No, I did it before. Export file.
Oh, yeah, the actual file. Yeah. The
Yeah,
visual.
so you can export this, and this will export the template, and that will export the content type as well. But then is the bit that you have to be careful, because if you're importing this elsewhere, and then you change something on the new content type, and then you decide to import the other visualizer with the different, that's when things go awry and like, no, it's not like a standalone thing, and it will like, you can do it if you're doing like from scratch on a virgin environment, like, you know, with something different names and such. But
do we have any other questions for Alessandra? Awesome. Well, thank you for presenting, Alessandra. That was
welcome.
a lot of content for a short period of time. So,
that's why you speak fast.
exactly. Well, I appreciate you doing this. I know a lot of people are interested in this kind of content and information. So glad we'll have that out there. I guess as we wrap up here, I want to thank everybody for joining. I see at one point we had, I think, 17 or so attendees. Of course, some people had to drop and others had to come in late, but thank you all for joining. I really hope you enjoyed the content, and give us some feedback if, especially about the new time here, if it works well for you or it doesn't work well for you. Just be interested to know. We'll be doing this again, just as a recap, doing this every other month. And the other time frame of 6:30 Eastern will be on the other months. Boy, that was really confusing saying, so I'm sure it was confusing hearing. This one, and then
All right.
Yeah, you want to say it, Ryan?
How about this? Join us next month, June 17th on Thursday. That is our next Southern Fried DNN User Group meeting. That will be held at 6:30 p.m. And we are going to alternate even and odd months there, so that we'll be doing either at 6:30 in the evening or at 3 o'clock Eastern time, alternating until we see how those go.
Excellent. Well, thanks for saying that much more clearly than I said it. So let us know, give us some feedback on all that. Thanks everybody for joining. We'll end the recording at this point and go into our after recording time.